It is still the lonely date that matters. Yes, lunch with Khanya on the station with the mind of its own, Radio Barb. Thank you so much for streaming us wherever you are, across the globe, across the African continent, across Mzansi. We appreciate you. And well, it is a wellness day, and that means we continue to chat and empower you and educate you when it comes to your mental, physical, spiritual, sexual, all the wellnesses that you need. And today, again, joining me is Simone Momplé. And of course, she is now becoming our resident something.
Yes, we need to refine that title.
A resident counselor. And I'm happy that you're joining us from Joburg today. Really excited about that. But that's for a story for another day. Today we are talking rejection, Simone, and we're talking about giving rejection as well as receiving rejection, and how we can do this with a path that will not leave the person that we're delivering the rejection to broken, and so that we also don't walk around feeling like we are less than if we receive rejection. Where do we even start? Because this is something that a lot of us fear, rejection.
Yeah, and I think mostly it's the fear that is actually more intimidating than the actual rejection. So, rejection, we get different types of rejection from family, friends, partners, or work-related, and even ourselves. We can also reject certain parts of ourselves. And obviously the counter to this is acceptance. And I think a lot of us strive to feel or be accepted in different groups or different settings. And that's what we really want. We want to be accepted for who we are and what we can offer as well. And how to receive rejection, wow. I think you can only really understand it once you've experienced it. And I think that the best way to kind of receive rejection is to prepare yourself in an optimistic way, sort of way before the time. So let's take a job, for example. You've been applying for jobs all this time and you sort of getting these rejection letters. And of course, during this time, a lot of companies are also letting go of people. So it's something that people have to deal with. But there's a certain level of preparation as opposed to the fear of it. If we fear it, it's sort of, we kind of find that it comes towards us a bit more quickly than if we prepare ourselves in a way to understand it firstly, understand what is this rejection, what is happening. Is it something that I did personally, or is it just because of something else that is outside of myself?
I want us to take it back there. Sorry, Simone, can I just cut you just to kind of take it a step back so before we can move forward? You spoke about when you started about the fear of rejection as opposed to rejection itself. Now this can be a bit of a conundrum, or an oxymoron, so to speak, actually, because we experience rejection possibly from birth, you know what I mean? And it comes in its different forms. I mean, as a baby, when you're being taught independence through sleep, to a certain extent, I can imagine that to that little person, it feels like rejection, that you have to self-soothe because no one's coming to get you because you must sleep in your own cot. You want to play with something and you're hearing no, don't touch that, don't do this. So basically rejection is a part of life, and we get it from a very early age. At what stage do we start fearing rejection? Because kids, you can tell them no now and then they come back to you, like they get over the rejection. At which stages in life do we start to fear the rejection that we know is inevitable?
Yeah, I think it's one of two things. Either you are constantly experiencing it in different forms and different ways, or alternatively, you've experienced it once and it was major. So that's, I guess, the two different ways that I would look at it. So if you're constantly experiencing it, and I think like this is where I say if you understand it, it's better. So if a parent explains that the reason why I'm saying no is for your protection, or because I understand that I've hurt myself here before, so if you do it, you're going to get hurt in a way. So if there's an explanation, we understand it, then we move away from, okay, I wasn't actually rejected, I was protected.
Say that again. Was not rejected, actually protected.
I was protected.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, and so we look at it, we need to look at things once we start getting a bit older and we start developing an understanding of self and others. I think you need to just step away from the idea of this rejection and look at it from a distance. So this is how we sort of practice our self-care. If you stand away from it and then you look at it objectively for a second, then you can sort of see all the moving parts that created this rejection that we define as rejection. Now, of course, it mostly is our definition of rejection, where personally I like to refer to it as redirection other than rejection. It's just sort of sometimes you are not necessarily aware of your bigger picture. So there needs to be certain things in place that you feel is rejection, where actually it's just actually you need to go that way in order to get where you actually need to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, so if you've just joined us, sorry, Simone, if you've just joined us, this is Lunch with Khanya. We're continuing to talk all things wellness. We are now talking rejection, which speaks to your mental wellness with Simone Momplé, our resident counselor. And well, she's just unpacked something that sometimes it is not a rejection, it is protection, and maybe see it as redirection. Please continue, Simone.
Yes, and I think that it's definitely the way that we view rejection or idea of rejection, and that is how we develop the fear of it. So the way that you look at it and say, nobody ever wants me, I'm always rejected, I'm getting these rejection letters from jobs or relationships also, people never want me to be part of their crew or whatever it may be. So we actually define the type of rejection that comes our way. And that's why when I explain what the types of rejection are, family, friends, partners, etc., my definition is that type of acceptance is only yourself. So there cannot be an acceptance with family and friends. You are accepting yourself only. And of course people might argue with me about this, but for me it's kind of the way I see it. So if I am accepting myself for everything that I am and who I am and my skills and all that I've learned over the years, then a company telling me we don't want you says more about the company than it does about me. And I accept that maybe I wasn't the fit for them. And I need to say that it's also not always about you. It's about the company maybe cannot afford it. Sometimes they'll say you're overqualified, which makes us feel bad, but that's a good thing, you know. Or you still need maybe a little bit more experience, which is good because sometimes we never know whatever role is it. I'll say role, this means relationships as well. You never know what type of role you're going to get into, and how do you prepare for something you don't know. And that's when we see it as rejection, where you think you might have been ready, but maybe you just needed one more month or one more skill or one more experience to get you to a better place. And then you might realize actually that job actually really wasn't for me. And something else might come across, might come for you that you feel is actually the perfect fit.
Yeah, that's the voice of Simone Momplé, our resident counselor, and we're talking rejection today. It is not rejection all the time. Sometimes it's protection. So all you need to do is to redirect. We were speaking about preparation, of course, when it comes to receiving rejection. So if you've gone out for that interview, you've walked up to somebody and say, hey, and you sent that message, can we do coffee? Now, my question is, isn't it counterintuitive to say to somebody, prepare yourself for the rejection before the event, to, forces or rather the laws of attraction that, you must be positive, you must be optimistic when you have gone to an interview and believe that, it will come your way. How do we balance, if it is even possible to balance between preparation and still remaining optimistic? And an example for that, Simone, would be, going to a casting, know and you saw other people and you know that other people are also good, or they're good at their craft. How do you then make sure that it's not going to drive you insane while you wait, and when that rejection comes and you are sure that I'm the one for this part? Can we balance the two?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the preparation, I'm looking at preparing yourself optimistically, not necessarily preparing for rejection, because at the same time, we want to also know what it's going to feel like to be accepted. And I think that when we think about being rejected or being told no or failing in some way, we must also understand that if something can pull us down that much and sort of set us into a spiral, then the opposite could also happen, that if something amazing happens and great, that you will hang on to those moments of greatness all the time, and then when something bad happens, we get pulled down as well. So it's almost as if, where are you latching onto? Are you latching onto always being accepted and being overly optimistic in some way? Or there's also the idea of toxic positivity. Are we just going to hope and hope and hope and hold on? Because if we do that, the same thing could happen in the opposite direction. So I would say to people, like, for example, who are going to perform in front of an audience, don't let the audience's reaction interfere with how you are performing, because if their applause can make your performance better, then their lack of applause or their booing will make your performance worse. So how do you separate yourself from understanding, I am here to bring my best self, and understand that I'm okay if I walk out of here with a no. Of course, I would like the yes. So you sort of have this conversation with yourself where you understand yourself in this space and know that I feel ready for this. And where I don't know what to do or what to say, I will be honest and say, I don't know. I will use the example, I went for my interview for my master's. In that interview, I knew I wanted to do only dance as my research. And I sat in front of a panel of 6 psychologists and I said, I only want to do dance. If you all don't want to take me, I'm going to go do it anyway. and it's sort of this confidence, but also when they asked me a question that I was supposed to know, I failed at answering it. But you got to understand what it is you really want. And are you able to do it independently of what people are going to say, the response. Of course, I'm not talking like major projects or things like that you don't have the resources for, but I'm talking about your personality, things that your drive, your understanding of life, your confidence. Can that be independent of what someone else would say?
Yeah. Now, before I let you go, Simone, I then want to take a look at this because we've talking to a large extent about receiving rejection. Now, for the people who are in positions of power, whether it's in workplaces, even in family setups, in a relationship where you kind of feel like, it's done, I'm going to check out, or, I need to walk away from this. Quickly, how can they then best deliver the message so that they're not leaving people broken? Because you find that, I've always had, qualms with, the entertainment industry, particularly broadcasting, where people submit their demos, they are hopeful, they enter competitions and they do things and they hear nothing. You know what I mean? Because I think that is a very harsh and very hard pill to swallow when nobody's giving, as you mentioned earlier on, an explanation of why we were unable to accept you at this point.
Yes. I think when it comes to understanding how to reject someone, that also helps you to deal with the rejection on the other end. So if you have to think about yourself as an employer, as you say, or someone who's in power, in order to do that, I think the first thing would be to be honest. Of course, we're not talking about the honesty where you're like, I didn't like your shoes. Like, that obviously has nothing to do with the role. I'm talking about be honest as to what the company is looking for and how they could fit in. And I also think you also need to prepare yourself to deliver that news and to say, okay, these are the few things I'm going to cover, and this is what I feel like I need to address. Definitely try and do it face-to-face, or a video call as we have to nowadays, or professional emails. And then definitely using these I statements. So I believe, or we as a company, that etc., instead of saying you, because that will really drive the person down even further. When you know how it is, if a young person or whoever it is would say, you don't have the look for what we're going with, that sits with them forever. So be very careful about how we say these types of things, because where you might reject that person for that same thing, another company will accept them for that very thing. So sort of just using the I statements and understanding all these feelings that are coming up for yourself as well. To give that rejection is also a lot. You also have to understand it. But then also try not to put it off for too long, because the longer we wait to do it, the harder it will get. And lastly, do not give false hope or promises to say, yes, we don't want you now, but later we can always do this. Or, no, we can still be friends, these relationships as well. It is, we can still be friends afterwards. It doesn't have to be a false promise. You can just keep it where it is and say, let's see what happens in future.
Well, thank you. That was the voice of Simone Momplé, our resident counsellor. And today we were talking about rejection. Remind us, Simone, how we can reach you.
Yes, I am on all social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn as Simone Momplé and YouTube as Simone Momplé. Also, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Instagram is Simone the Dancer. But otherwise, just Google my name. You should find me, Simone Momple.
Thank you so much, Simone. That brings us to exactly 39 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock on the only date that matters at Lunch with Khanya, as we officially wrap up Wellness Day on the station with the mind of its own Radio Bob. Now I'm back at your service, full force, to give you beats of pleasure, simple, smooth, and saucy.
Listen up. Radio Bob.